Hello and welcome to the second part of cloning vectors. This is Dr. Mohammad Zafar Iqbal, Government Art Science College, Karwar. In this video, I am going to give some information about the construction of the cloning vectors based on the Bacteriophage lambda. In the earlier video, that is in the first part, I have already given information about the how can we develop the cloning vectors based on the plasmid. And in this video, we will try to understand about the construction of the cloning vectors from the Bacteriophage lambda. Before getting into the actual content of the subject, let us have a look at the different type of the viruses. And viruses are in a large number, and today it is one of the major cause of diseases to the human being and even to the animals also. And whatever the viruses are there, all the viruses are classified into as many as 7 groups. And Baltimore has given a very convenient type of the classification. According to this classification, he has made 7 groups, and for this particular classification, he has used various parameters. One of the very important parameter for the classification of the virus is the type of the genetic material. Whether the viruses have got a DNA as a genetic material or they have a RNA as a genetic material. And out of 7 different groups, whatever the Baltimore system has, we are only concerned with the group 1, that double-stranded DNA bacteriophages, and we are interested in the group 2 single-stranded DNA viruses. And apart from these 2 groups, whatever the rest of the groups are there, they don't have any importance in the construction of the cloning vectors. And if the bacteriophages are taken into consideration, bacteriophage is not a single group, it is a very, very large group, it is a very heterogeneous group. And whatever the bacteriophages are there, the bacteriophages are nothing but these are the viruses which specifically infect the bacteria. They use a bacteria as a host cell. In the same way, there are certain viruses which use only animal cell as a host cell. They are called as the animal viruses. And similarly, there are certain viruses which only infect the plants. In this way, you can find that every virus will have its own host will be there, and according to that, you will find that they are called as the bacteriophages. They are called as the animal viruses, or they are called as the plant viruses. And whatever the bacteriophages are there, all the bacteriophages are nothing but these are the viruses which specifically infect the bacteria. And this heterogeneous group of bacteriophages can be again divided into 5 different types of the groups. The first group is called as the temperate phases. And in the temperate phases, all the bacteriophages have got a double-stranded DNA molecule, and some of the popular examples under this category are the Bacteriophage lambda and Bacteriophage mu. The second important group of bacteriophages are the TE1 bacteriophages. They are also double-stranded DNA bacteriophages, and some of the popular examples are the T2, T4, T6 bacteriophages. And the third and very important type of the bacteriophages, at least for our discussion, is the filamentous bacteriophages. And if filamentous type of the bacteriophages, all of them have got a single-stranded DNA molecule. And some of the popular examples which come under this particular category are the Bacteriophage M13, Bacteriophage FD, and Bacteriophage F1. These are some of the examples which are the filamentous type of the bacteriophage, and this particular group of bacteriophages are also very important for the construction of the cloning vector. And the fourth group is called as the spherical bacteriophages. Since they have got a spherical shape, that's why these bacteriophages are called as the spherical bacteriophages. And in case of this particular bacteriophages also, we will find that there is a single-stranded DNA molecule is present. And the popular example of this particular category is the 5X174. And apart from these 4 DNA genetic material bacteriophages, we have got another group of bacteriophages. They have a genetic material in the form of RNA. And those bacteriophages are called as the RNA bacteriophages. And out of these different type of the bacteriophages, we are only interested in the 2 group for the construction of the cloning vector. The first one is the temperate bacteriophages, and the second one is the filamentous bacteriophages. As I already said that the temperate bacteriophages have got a double-stranded DNA molecule, and popular examples are the lambda, Bacteriophage lambda, Bacteriophage mu, and Bacteriophage P1. And the second category of bacteriophages which are important for us to develop the cloning vectors are the filamentous type of the bacteriophages. In this group of bacteriophages, all the bacteriophages have got a single-stranded DNA molecule, and in this video, we will try to concentrate on the construction of the bacteriophage based upon the Bacteriophage lambda. And before we get into the actual discussion on the construction of the bacteriophage based lambda vectors, we will see that two groups are important. One is the double stranded DNA bacteriophages, and under this category we have two examples. One is the bacteriophage lambda. It is the temperate bacteriophage. In case of the bacteriophage lambda, we can see that whatever the bacteriophages are there, once the adsorption of the bacteriophage occurs on the bacteria, then the genome is injected into the bacteria, and once the genome gets into the bacteria, then we will find that they have a choice between the two different type of the pathways. Either they can use the lytic pathway or they can choose the lysogenic pathway. Such type of the bacteriophages are called as the temperate bacteriophages. And if bacteriophage lambda is a temperate type of the bacteriophages, and if it chooses the lysogenic pathway, then it integrates the genome, that is the bacteriophage genome gets integrated into the genome of the bacteria. And the second example, that is the bacteriophage P1. This is slightly different from the bacteriophage lambda. In case of bacteriophage P1 also, it is also the temperate bacteriophage. Here also they have a choice. Once the genome gets integrated enters into the bacteria, then the bacteriophage P1 genome has got two choices. Either it can enter into the lytic pathway or it can enter into the lysogenic pathway. If it chooses the lysogenic pathway, the major difference between the bacteriophage P1 and bacteriophage lambda is that the bacteriophage P1 do not integrate the genome into the genome of the bacteria. It just remains just like a plasmid. How we have already discussed about the plasmid. The plasmid, sometimes we can find that the plasmid never gets integrated into the genome of the bacteria. It remains independently. In the same, we can find that the genome of the bacteriophage P1 also remains independently without getting integrated into the genome of the bacteria. And whatever this particular condition is there, this is the lysogenic phase of the bacteria. And we have got a second important group of bacteriophages which can also be used for the construction of the cloning vectors are the filamentous type of the bacteriophages. The filamentous type of the bacteriophages, as already said, that they have a single stranded DNA molecule. Only one strand of the DNA molecule is present. And we have got three popular examples for the construction of the cloning vector. One of the example is the bacteriophage M13. The bacteriophage M13 based cloning vectors are very popular in majority of the laboratories. If you go to the anywhere in the world, you will find that majority of the laboratories who are doing research work on the recombinant DNA technology, they preferably use the bacteriophage M13 because the bacteriophage M13 has got certain merits, and because of these merits, it is one of the very popular type of the cloning vector which is used throughout the world. And second type of the bacteriophages are called as the bacteriophage F1. These are also very prominent, very promising type of the bacteriophages which can be developed into the cloning vector. And similarly, we have got one more example, that is the bacteriophage FD. And altogether, if the bacteriophage M13, bacteriophage F1 and bacteriophage FD are taken, all of them are very similar to each other. If the genome is taken, then we will find that the genome is very similar to each other. They differ from each other in only in the 50 to 180 base pair. And apart from that, there is no difference at all between these three different type of the filamentous type of the bacteriophages. Before we get into the actual construction of the bacteriophage based cloning vectors, let us have a look at the genome of the biology of the bacteriophage lambda. He has already said that the bacteriophage lambda is a temperate bacteriophage, and it has got a choice once the adsorption is completed. After that, the DNA of the bacteriophage lambda gets injected into the bacteria, and once it gets injected into bacteria, then you will find that it undergoes the circularization, and after the circularization you can find that it has got a choice between two different pathways. Either it can choose the lytic pathway or it can choose the lysogenic pathway. And if it chooses the lytic pathway, then it will not integrate into the genome of the bacteria. It remains like that only, undergoes replication, and then it will lyse the cell and comes out of the bacteria and again goes and infect some other bacteria. And if it chooses the second pathway, that is the lysogenic pathway, whatever the genome of the bacteriophage is there, this genome of the bacteriophage gets integrated into the genome of the bacteria. Once the integration is completed, then it is called as the prophase. And in the prophase condition, it remains like that only for a good number of generation. Only after attaining a very good number, then only it will get induced, and then it will again come out of the genome of the bacteria, and again it will continue as the lytic, whatever the lytic pathway, in the same it will continue. And if the genome of the bacteriophage is studied, we know that it has got a total 48.5 kilobase pair, that is the 48,502 number of nucleotides are present, and it is a double stranded DNA molecule, and when it is present within the body of the bacteriophage virus, it remains a linear structure, and whenever it gets injected into the bacteria, then you can find that it will attain the circular shape. And in order to facilitate the conversion of the linear DNA molecule into the circular DNA molecule, on either side, that is on the left side of the DNA and on the right side of the DNA, there is a 12 nucleotides overhangs are present, and what these two overhangs are complementary to each other. The overhang which is present on the right side is complementary to the overhang which is present on the left side, and once the circularization is completed, then you will find that they will base pair and the hydrogen bonds are formed, and because of this you can find that they make a circle, and afterwards they utilize the DNA ligase from the bacteria, and that DNA ligase is used for the ligation reaction, and in this way you can find that the linear bacteriophage lambda DNA gets converted into the circular DNA form. And this is the example. Here we can see that this is the linear form of the DNA molecule. It's once it gets injected into the bacteria in the host cell, it undergoes circularization, and circularization will not take place at any place in the host cell. You'll find that there's attachment sites are present. They are called as the ATT sites, and whatever the ATT sites are there, these are the sites where exactly the integration of the genome of the bacteriophage will take place. And this particular region is complementary to the region which is present in case of the bacteriophage DNA, and because of the complementarity which is existing between the bacteriophage lambda genome and the ATT sites in case of the bacterial genome, that's why they get integrated. That's why I can find that the bacteriophage lambda DNA can only get integrated into the ATT site, and apart from the ATT site, this particular DNA will not get integrated into any other region. This is one of the very, very important feature. Whereas in case of the other bacteriophages, if you take the example of a bacteriophage MU, it also gets integrated into the genome of the bacteria, but the only thing is that it doesn't have any fixed position. Sometimes it can get integrated into one particular part, sometimes in second reaction it can go and integrate into some other part. It means that it uses the transposable mechanism, and by using the transposable mechanism, the DNA of the bacteriophage MU gets integrated into the genome of the bacteria. But in case of the bacteriophage lambda, there is a fixed sites are present, and these fixed sites are called the ATT sites. Only in case of the ATT sites, the genome of the bacteriophage lambda can get integrated into this thing. And we also need to discuss about the lytic and the lysogeny, because this is very, very important, because the bacteriophage lambda has to take a decision whether it is supposed to take the pathway of the lytic pathway or it is supposed to take the lysogenic pathway. And whatever this particular decision is there, this particular decision completely depends upon the immediate transcription of one particular protein. We call it as a C2 protein. And the first protein, once the DNA of the bacteriophage lambda gets into the bacteria, the first earliest transcription of the C2 protein will take place. And whatever this particular C2 protein is there, this is the protein which is going to decide whether the bacteriophage is going to enter into the lytic pathway or it is going to enter into the lysogenic pathway. And the quantity of the C2 protein is very, very important. If it reaches a very to a particular threshold, it should be in a very, very high quantity, then only it will activate the transcription of the another gene that is called the INT gene. And the INT gene is responsible for it encodes a particular protein called as the integrase protein. And integrase protein is the protein which is responsible for helping the integration of this particular genome into the genome of the bacteria. It means that the C2 protein should be in adequate quantity, and if it is present in adequate quantity, then only the lysogenic pathway is possible. That's why you will find that the C2 protein it will directly go and induce the transcription of the INT gene, and the INT gene will produce the integrase protein. The integrase protein is responsible for the integration of the genome of the bacteriophage lambda into the genome of the bacteria. And in case if this particular protein is not present in a sufficient quantity, if it is less than that particular threshold, then ultimately you can find that it has no other choice but to enter into the lytic pathway. It will simply enter into the lytic pathway, undergo few rounds of replication, and lyse open the bacteria, and it will get released from that particular bacteria, and it will go and infect some other bacteria. In this way, you can find that for the decision of the lytic and lysogenic pathway, the C2 protein is very, very important. And depending upon the quantity of the C2 protein, the bacteriophage genome is going to decide whether it is supposed to enter into the lytic pathway or it is supposed to enter into the lysogenic pathway. This is one brief information which is necessary for us to understand the genome of the bacteriophage lambda. Then this is once it undergoes circularization in the bacteria, then we can find that it will get converted into this particular thing. Now we can find that there is a cause sites are present, and these cause sites are nothing but they are the flanking regions, 12 nucleotides on the either side of the bacteriophage DNA. And after that, once it gets circularized, hydrogen bonds are the bonds which temporarily stabilize this particular structure. And once this particular circularization is completed, then you will find that it will uses the DNA ligase, and the DNA ligase is the enzyme which is going to seal the this particular nick which is there over when it once becomes the circular. And in this way we can see that this is the circular form of DNA molecule which is present in case of the bacteria. But when this particular genome is present in the bacteriophage lambda, then it will always be present in the linear form, only it gets circularized in the bacteria. And now we have to discuss about the one of the very important feature why we are going to use bacteriophage lambda for the construction of the cloning vectors. Why not other bacteriophages? So many different types of bacteriophages are there, and we are not going to take all of them for the construction of the cloning vector, but we are only interested in the bacteriophage lambda. And one of the very important reason for why we are going to select this particular bacteriophage lambda as a cloning vector is nothing but it is the organization of the genome. The genome is constructed in such a way that there are somewhere about 40 genes are present, and if these 40 genes are taken into consideration, then we will find that they are present in clusters, and this particular one particular cluster is responsible for a one particular function. Take for example the cluster between 0 to 20 kilobase pair, that is the starting part of the genome, is responsible for the capsid head components and the assembly, that is the part all the genes which are responsible for the components of the capsid and the assembly process, all of them are present only in the 0 to 20 kilobase pair. The 20 to 35 kilobase pair, this is generally designated as the non-essential region. Why we call it as a non-essential region? Because this is the region which is not at all, if we play with this, if we remove this particular DNA from the bacteriophage genome, then it will nothing will happen, and because of this reason we call it as a non-essential region. And within this non-essential region between 28 to 34 there is a genes are there, and these genes are responsible for the integration and excision. Inti gene and exi genes are present, and these two genes are responsible for the integration and excision of the genome from the bacteria. Once if it wants to integrate into the genome of the bacteria, then INT gene is used. It will use synthesize the integrase protein, and that will help in the integration process. And once this particular once it has completed the lysogenic phase, once it wants to come out of that particular bacterial genome, then you will find that exigene will produce a protein, and that particular protein is responsible for the excision of the genome of the bacteriophage from the bacteria. Then this is the cluster of the cluster which is responsible for the this type of, that is integration and excision activity. This is present as a cluster with a particular type of the function. And the next cluster is the 35 to 44. This is called as the early regulation. And whatever the early regulation of DNA synthesis there, this will occur in the whatever genes which are necessary for the early regulation, all of them are present in the 35 to 41 kilobase pair. And afterwards the 42 to 44 kilobase, this is the another cluster, and all the different type of genes which are necessary for the DNA synthesis, they are present in the 42 to 44 kilobase pair. And afterwards 46 kilobase pair, this is the region which is responsible for the late regulation, and 47 to 48 kb is the region of the DNA or the cluster of the DNA which is responsible for the lysis of the host cell. And in this way we can find that once this particular organization of the genome of the bacteriophage lambda is taken, then we will find that it is conveniently present in a very convenient way, and all the genes for a particular function are located in one particular cluster. And we have got an additional region between 20 to 35 kilobase pair. This is generally called as the non-essential region, and if this particular non-essential region is removed, then the bacteria is not going to lose its property, and that's why we can actually remove this particular part of the genome, and we can introduce the gene of our interest into that particular region. Now, what is the aim of developing the cloning vectors based on the bacteriophage lambda? Now, we already discussed in the first video that if the plasmids are used, then we have got a limitation, size limitation is there. Only a DNA which may be somewhere about 2 kilobase pair, 3 kilobase pair, or 4 or 5 kilobase pair, that particular type of the DNA can be cloned in case of the by using the vector, that is the plasmid based cloning vector, and that is the limitation which is there in case of the plasmid. But by using this particular bacteriophage lambda, what we can do is that our aim of cloning is to clone a DNA which has got a length of about 5 to 25 kilobase pair. Even if you have got a DNA which is anywhere between 5 to 25 kilobase pair, that particular DNA fragment should be cloned, and that should be the aim of the cloning in case of the Bacteriophage lambda. But for this we have got two very important problem. One is the size limitation. The size limitation is that if you take the head of this particular Bacteriophage, it can only accommodate 52 kilobase pairs of DNA. If the DNA is more than 52 kilobase pair, then that particular DNA cannot be accommodated into the isoicosahedral head region of the Bacteriophage lambda. And that's why in fact that only if the DNA is of less than 52 kilobase pair, then only it can be accommodated. And if it is more than that, then we cannot accommodate that particular DNA into the head of the Bacteriophage lambda. That is the one very important serious problem. Because now what is the consequence? The consequence that if you remove 52 kilobase pair capacity minus the genome of the Bacteriophage itself has got a 48.5 kilobase pair, and what is left over? We have only a freedom of about 3.5 kilobase pair. We can only clone a DNA which has got a length of about 3.4 kilobase pair. Otherwise, we can't. If the DNA is more than that, we cannot clone actually. That is the problem with this particular genome. Now, this is the serious problem, because what is the most important thing is that if we have to clone a DNA of about 3.5 kilobase pair, then what is the need of using the Bacteriophage lambda as a cloning vector? We could have used the plasmid itself, and that's why you can find out whatever this particular thing is there, we have to overcome this particular difficulty, and we have to solve this problem. Then only we can develop the Bacteriophage lambda as a cloning vector which can clone a DNA in anywhere between 5 to 25 kilobase pair. The second problem is that the recognition sequences, as the size of the genome increases, then there is a more likely possibility of having more number of the recognition sequences for a particular type of the restriction endonuclease. And similarly, you can find out as theoretically, it is believed even in case of this particular Bacteriophage lambda also, you will find that there are multiple number of recognition sequences are present for a particular type of restriction endonuclease. So I can find that it is another very serious problem. If more number of recognition sequences are there, whenever you digest that particular DNA with the restriction endonuclease, then the whole genome gets divided into small pieces, and then it is of no use. That's why we have to judiciously overcome this particular difficulty, and solutions are there. The first solution we already discussed, that the packaging. The normal lambda genome has got a length of about 48.5 kilobase pair, and the capacity of the head is just 52 kilobase pair. It means that we can only clone a DNA which has got a length of about 3 kilobase pair. This is just a diagrammatic representation, what we have already explained in just 1 or 2 minutes back. And this problem can be overcome, because why? The most important point what we have associated with the Bacteriophage lambda is that the Bacteriophage lambda has got a non-essential region. The region between 20 to 35 kilobase pair is called as the non-essential region, and if this particular part of the genome or DNA of that particular Bacteriophage lambda is removed, then it is not going to affect anything with the Bacteriophage lambda. It will remain the infection capacity, it will retain the DNA synthesis and replication ability, and it will remain whatever the vital activities are there, all the vital activities are retained, and it is not going to, if this particular region is removed, nothing will happen. That's why what we can do is that now we can remove this particular non-essential region, and the non-essential region between 20 to 35, it means that it has got a 15 kilobase pair, and 15 kilobase pair plus a 3 kilobase pair, 3.5 kilobase pair, already we have got a, now we will get an ability to clone a DNA of about 18.5 kilobase pair. This is the way how we are going to solve the first problem. The second problem is the problem with the multiple recognition sites. As already said that as the genome size increases, then there is a likely possibility of having a recognition sequences, more number of recognition sequences for a particular type of the restriction endonuclease. And if there are 1 or 2 restriction recognition sites are present, then we can use the technique called as the site-directed mutagenesis. That technique can be used for to change 1 or 2 nucleotides to some other nucleotide actually. But in case of the Bacteriophage lambda, there are multiple such type of the sites are present, and you can't use that particular technique for such type of the condition. And another important point is that exactly we don't know where exactly that particular recognition sequence are present. That's why the site-directed mutagenesis technique cannot be used for the removal of this particular recognition sequences. What we have to do is that we have to subject it to the natural selection, and the ultimate solution left with us is nothing but is to subject that particular bacteriophage with the natural selection. You have to infect that particular bacteriophage with the E. coli, which produces the very, very high quantity of the E. coli. And once this particular thing is done, then you can find out the mutant bacteriophages will be there with a few number of recognition sequences for the EcoR1. And when this particular sequence of infection is continued for a good number of generation, ultimately we will come out with a one particular mutant bacteriophage which doesn't have any EcoR1 restriction site for the restriction endonucleases are not at all existing. And in this we can find that this is the way we are going to solve the second problem. That's why we find that by using the two different type of the methods, by using two different type of the thing, whatever two problems are there, we are able to solve those two problems. And after that we can find out whatever this particular bacteriophage lambda is there, now it is completely available with us for the development of a cloning vector. And after this we can find out there are two different type of the possibilities are there. One is one of the possibility is the construction of the insertion vector, and second one is the possibility of the construction of a second type of the vectors, what we call them as a replacement vector. These are the two different types of the vectors which can be constructed from the bacteriophage lambda. And in the construction of the insertion vector, a very simple thing is used. In case of the construction of the insertion vector, you can find that there must be at least one recognition site should be there for a particular restriction endonuclease. And whatever this particular non-essential region is there, the non-essential region is removed, it is cleaved, and after the cleaving that particular part of non-essential region, then whatever the right and left franking regions are there, these two regions are ligated together, and after that you can find out, ultimately you can find out the genome size is reduced from 49 kilobase pair to somewhere about 35 to 40 kilobase pair. And with this we have got an additional capacity of this. This is the way by which we are going to construct the insertion vectors. That's why we call them an insertion vector. Why? Because what we have to do is that whatever a single restriction site is present for a restriction endonuclease, that is the place where exactly we are going to insert the gene of our interest. That's why it is called the insertion vector. And for this we need to have a one recognition sequence site should be there for a particular type of the restriction endonuclease. And one of the very popular type of the example which is there in the insertion vector is the lambda GT10. This is the one of the very popular type of the cloning vector which is used in majority of the laboratories. And here you will find that non-essential region is removed. Whatever the left over part is there, right and left regions are there, flanking regions are there, they are ligated together. Then you can find out whatever the EcoR1 is there. Here they use the restriction site called as the EcoR1. EcoR1 is the recognition sequence for the one particular type of the restriction endonuclease, what we call it as a EcoR1 restriction endonuclease. And then you can find out whatever the EcoR1 is there, this EcoR1 is located in the C1 gene. And whatever the C1 gene is there, this is the one of the very important gene which is responsible for the which encodes the particular protein, what we call it as a lambda repressor. And that's why if this particular protein is inhibited, if this particular protein fails to synthesize the repressor, then you can find that we are not going to, it is going to affect with the formation of the plaque. That's why you can find that this particular EcoR1 is present in the C1 gene. And once the gene of interest is introduced into the this restriction site of the EcoR1, then you can find that there is a functional abortion of this particular CL gene will take place. This particular gene is non-functional. Now it is not going to give any function actually. And that's why you find that whatever the recombinants are there, we can easily identify the recombinants and the non-recombinants just by observing whether there is a clear plaque is present or a turbid plaque is present. If the turbid plaque is present, it means that there is no recombinant DNA is not at all present in that particular bacteria. And if you get a clear plaque, that is an indication that that is the bacteria, it has got a bacteria. In that particular bacteria, there is a recombinant DNA is present, and based upon just whether a clear plaque is present or a turbid plaque is present, we can simply identify this particular thing. For this, we need to make one more video for the screening. Just I am giving a brief information about the how exactly we are going to identify this thing. Then the next type of the insertion vector is called the lambda ZAP2. And in lambda ZAP2, we can find that what they have done is that instead of using the that is the EcoR1, they have used the another type of the gene that is called the LAC-Z dash gene. And we know that whatever the LAC-Z dash gene is there, this is the gene which is responsible for the synthesis of the protein called the beta galactosidase. And whatever this particular enzyme is there, this enzyme is very important. And we have already discussed in the plasmid video that if this particular gene is present, and this particular gene is nothing but it is only a particular part, fifth end of that particular partial gene is present, and it can be induced by means of a IPTG. And once it is induced by means of the IPTG, then we can find out we can get a blue colored colonies can be formed. And whatever this particular lambda ZAP2s are there, they will have a LAC-Z dash gene, and within the LAC-Z dash gene, you will find that there is a restriction site is present. And once the gene of interest is introduced into this particular gene, then we can find that the procedure of the identification will become very, very easy. That is if you get blue colony, blue plaques, then it means that there is no recombinant bacteria, they are not the recombinant bacteria. And if you get a clear plaque, then it means that you have a recombinant bacteria are present. In this way, you can find out in case of the lambda GT10, we are going to use whether the clear plaque is present or a clear plaque is present or a turbid plaque is present. Whereas in case of the lambda ZAP2, we are going to use the color differentiation. If the blue plaques are there, then there is no recombinant bacteria are not there. And if you get a clear plaque, then it means that it is a recombinant bacteria are present over there. And another important difference is that in case of the lambda GT10, we can clone a DNA of anywhere between 8 to 10 kilo base pair. Whereas by using this particular lambda ZAP2, we can clone a DNA somewhere between 10 to 14 kilo base pair. That is the very, very high capacity is present as compared to the lambda GT10. And the second type of the vector fast lambda vectors are called as the replacement vector. And why we call them as a replacement vector? Because here we can find that at least two recognition restriction sites are present. And these two restriction sites will flank the non-essential region. And whatever the region which comes between these two restriction sites is called as the stuffer fragment. And this particular stuffer fragment can be anytime replaced by means of our gene of interest actually. And that's when we find that whatever, since we are going to replace a particular fragment of the vector fast lambda genome with our own that is the foreign DNA molecule. That's why this type of the vectors are called as the replacement vector. And the simple thing is that you have to digest this particular replacement vector with the restriction endonucleases. Then the digestion will take place. Then you have to introduce the gene of your interest, and whatever these stuffer fragments are there. And in order to remove the possibility of the reintegration of the stuffer fragment, what is done is that in case of the stuffer fragment, another set of restriction endonucleases sites are introduced, and so that whatever the stuffer fragment is there, it will get converted into the very, very short fragments. And once it gets converted into the very, very short fragment, then you will find that there is no possibility of the reintegration of this particular stuffer fragment. And only candidate which is available for the integration is nothing but it is the foreign DNA. That's why you find that in order to make this particular vector very, very useful, what we have to do is that we have to introduce additional restriction sites within the stuffer fragment. And at the time of the digestion with the actual restriction endonuclease which is going to be used for the actual purpose, we have to use the second restriction endonuclease which are going to cleave this particular stuffer DNA fragment to small pieces, so that there is no competitor with the foreign DNA molecule. Now we can find out once the ligation procedure is completed, then our gene of interest or the new DNA is going to be integrated into that particular place. This is the way by which we are going to introduce the foreign. That's why here what we are going to do, we are going to replace the fragment of the DNA of the vector fast lambda with the foreign DNA. That's why it is called a replacement vector. Whereas in case of the insertion vector, what we have done is that already we have removed before the construction of the cloning vector itself. At the time of the construction of the cloning itself, we have removed that particular fragment, and after removing that, we have religated the rest of the region actually. And that's why it is called the insertion vector. Whereas in case of this particular thing, you can find that here we have not removed, we have only introduced two restriction sites on the flanking to this particular stuffer region. And then we can find out at the time of the experiment, we are going to replace this particular DNA fragment with the foreign DNA. That's why it is called the replacement vector. And one of the very, very popular replacement vector is the lambda-2. And here you can find that two restriction sites are there. Generally, during the construction, they use the EcoR1 as the restriction recognition sequences or the restriction sites. And whatever this particular replacement vector is there, lambda dash 2 is there. This can replace it can actually clone a DNA of about 23 to 25 kilobase pair. Generally, it depends upon how much DNA you are removed, or how much that particular stuffer DNA fragment is removed, what type of enzyme you have used, and depending upon the nature of the experiment, what type of enzyme you have used, and anywhere between 18 to 25 kilobase pairs of the DNA can be cloned. That's how you can find that. Now we can find that at the end of this particular video, we can come to a conclusion that the bacteriophage lambda, even though they have certain very good genomic features which can be used for the construction of the cloning vector, and at the same time they also have certain limitations, certain problems, and these problems can also be overcome. And by overcome these problems, we can find that we can actually develop a very good cloning vectors, and that's why today we have got two very good cloning vectors in the form of insertion vectors and the replacement vector. With this, thank you very much for watching this video, and in the next video we'll try to discuss about the construction of the cloning vectors from the bacteriophage M13.